I'm sure you've already seen the video where Ted Cruz was growling and begging and pleading before Tucker Carlson last week regarding his statement about the January 6th was a riot and the rioters ought to be punished to the full extent of the law. And then he came on the next day and asked Tucker Carlson on Fox News, called him a liar 6 times to his face. And here's the senator from the state of Texas who growled and bowed and tried to, and said he was stupid and dumb. I'm going to let you listen to the actual to this interchange where Ted Cruz actually calls himself dumb and stupid, and Tucker Carlson just keep calling him a liar. And I want to set the stage here about what's going on in America and what's going on with the Trumpians and the Trump sycophants and the Trump supporters and the MAGA hat wearers. Is this what y'all come to? Is this what it is? That a senator will let a news anchor call him a liar before his face, before the world, and you don't defend yourself?
Every conservative appreciates Ted Cruz because he's one of the smartest and most articulate people in the Congress, and he's conservative. But he referred publicly to what happened on January 6th as, quote, a violent terror attack. Here it is.
We are approaching a solemn anniversary this week, and it is an anniversary of a violent terrorist attack on the Capitol, where we saw the men and women of law enforcement demonstrate incredible courage, incredible bravery, risk their lives to defend the men and women who serve in this Capitol.
Senator Cruz was game enough to come on tonight. We appreciate that. He joins us now. Senator, thanks so much for coming on. So I guess there are a lot of dumb people in the Congress. You're not one of them. I think you're smarter than I am. And you never use words carelessly. And yet you called this a terror attack when by no definition was it a terror attack. That's a lie. You told that lie on purpose, and I'm wondering why you did.
Well, Tucker, thank you for having me on. When you aired your episode last night, I sent you a text shortly thereafter and said, listen, I'd like to go on because the way I phrased things yesterday, it was sloppy and it was frankly dumb. And
I don't buy that. Whoa. I don't buy that. Look, I've known you a long time, since before you went to the Senate. You were a Supreme Court contender. You take words as seriously as any man who's ever served in the Senate. And every word, you repeated that phrase. I do not believe that you used that accidentally. I just don't.
I want to say that, how could the state of Texas, first of all, Tribulation Trump called Ted Cruz lying Ted. Now Tucker Carlson called him a liar. Tribulation Trump said Ted Cruz's wife was ugly. So that song there, hey man, I saw your wife the other day and she is ugly. Say the wind blew her hair in her face, and then the wind blew her hair in my face, and then the wind blew her hair in the street. Hey, man, I saw your wife the other day. Hey, Ted Cruz, I saw your wife the other day, and she is ugly. Now, I didn't say that, but that's what Tribulation Trump said. And then he said Ted Cruz's father was involved in the assassination of John Kennedy, President John Kennedy. And Ted Cruz didn't defend him. What is it with Ted Cruz? He let Tucker Carlson slap him like that, humiliate him before the world. And he just said, well, it was kind of dumb. It was dumb. It was poorly choice words. It was dumb, and I need to refocus what I said. But the truth of the matter is, he did call it a riot. He did call it an insurrection. He did it several times, and I'm going to show you the video where he did it. But when Tucker Carlson calls him out on it, he denies his own truth. Listen, I tell you what I'm going to do. The night before January 6th of this year, the anniversary of the insurrection, the assault on the Temple of Democracy is what I call it. Both Anderson Cooper and Tucker Carlson did a piece, sort of a summary of what they thought. They did it on January 5th of what they thought that January 6th was going to look like. Now, if we have those two interviews, those two summaries, I want to start with Tucker Carlson first. He's going to give you a whitewash. I'll let you see for yourself what he's going to say, how he's going to characterize. Now, you have seen what took place a year ago, January 6th. Watch how Tucker Carlson explains it to the MAGA hat wearers. Watch this.
Pardon the good cheer, solemnity is called for. Today is January 5th, or as it will henceforth be known to all civilized peoples around the world, January 6th Eve. Tonight at midnight, just hours from now, we will begin the first of many annual remembrances of the horrifying atrocities that took place exactly 1 year ago at the United States Capitol. So how do you commemorate something like this, a history-changing event that's horrible to think about, yet so significant in the life of the country? Well, body counts are the traditional measure. When the nation was racked by unimaginable loss in years past, that's how we remembered it. 40,000 casualties at Gettysburg, 2,400 lost at Pearl Harbor, nearly 3,000 Americans dead on 9/11. But this is a new time, a different age. Those antiquated metrics won't work as we observe a moment of silence for the fallen of January 6th. On January 6th, there was, well, let's see, actually, there was just Ashley Babbitt. Ashley Babbitt was not a Union soldier. She was not a deckhand on the Arizona. She was not even a heroic fireman rushing into a collapsing office tower. She was merely a Trump voter. She was unarmed. She was shot to death without warning by a Capitol Hill police officer with a documented history of reckless behavior. In the end, Ashley Babbitt was the death toll on January 6th. But honestly, so what? It's not really about the numbers, is it? It's not about how many people were killed on January 6th. In fact, the list of those who weren't killed on January 6th is quite long. It's impressively long. It includes all 535 members of Congress, as well as their entire staffs and the press corps that covers them. None of them died. They're still around. But again, who cares? It's not about body counts. It's about feelings. It's about how the survivors feel, especially the reporters who survived. The feelings of reporters in Washington matter a great deal in America. They certainly matter a lot more than how you feel at the moment. How you feel, as you probably noticed by this point, is totally irrelevant to anyone. Nobody cares. But the journalists of Capitol Hill, we do care, and they're very upset. In fact, many have still not recovered from what they saw that day. As they lie down to sleep at night, the horrible images replay on a loop on the back of their eyelids. The deafening thunder of cannon volleys, the smoke from the remorseless artillery fire blotting out the sun, the screams of the mortally wounded calling out for their loved ones, echoing like some demonic soundtrack against the walls of the speaker's lobby. Hell in a very small place. Unless you were there that day, you cannot possibly understand what it was like. Imagine the Tet Offensive plus Fallujah plus the night before Thanksgiving at Whole Foods. On January 6th, you couldn't tell who the enemy was unless you looked down and saw they bought their shoes at Walmart. Then you knew. But otherwise, it was the fog of war, my friends. Casey Hunt was there that day. Hunt is now something called the Chief National Affairs Analyst over at CNN. As a veteran of the siege of the Capitol, Hunt took to Twitter today to give hope to her fellow survivors. Quote, "Tomorrow is going to be a tough one for those of us who were there or had loved ones in the building. Thinking of all of you and finding strength knowing I'm not alone in this. Hashtag January 6th. That was just a tweet. But someday, you've got to believe, because this is a hopeful country, that Hunt and her fellow survivors of the insurrection massacre of January 6th will come together in some more formal way. Annual reunions held in the shadow of Washington's certain to be built January 6th memorial, the one they're going to have to bulldoze the Washington Monument to construct. Hunt and graying, grizzled veterans of the Washington Post and Bloomberg News and Politico and the Daily Beast and the Atlantic Magazine will raise their white claws as one and remember how they cheated death that terrible day. Okay, we'll stop. It's too embarrassing. We're feeling shame even making fun of it. And in fact, as a political matter anyway, the anniversary of January 6th is not a joke at all. It's a serious thing, a very serious thing. Pretending that a protest was actually a failed coup is the Democratic Party's entire strategy to win this year's midterm election. At this point, it's all they've got. Governing didn't work. And that's why today, the Attorney General of the United States, one of the most political men in Washington, announced the Department of Justice will continue to harass and arrest people who voted for Donald Trump. Watch.
The Justice Department remains committed to holding all January 6 perpetrators at any level accountable under law, whether they were present that day or were otherwise criminally responsible for the assault on our democracy. We will follow the facts wherever they lead.
Everyone who is responsible. So the Department of Justice already had the largest manhunt in its history. John Dillinger is laughing from the pit of hell. January 6th trumped him. And it trumped the manhunt after 9/11. It trumps all manhunts. So people who were just standing there taking pictures on their phone got picked up by the FBI. Some of them got sent to jail. But it's not ending. There's still more to come. And of course, Merrick Garland never speaks alone. The chorus always joins him because they always move as one. Frank Figliuzzi, for example, he's a high FBI official. He now works at, quote, NBC News, tweeted this prediction/observation, quote, Attorney General references Watergate. Get it? Merrick Garland pledges pursuit of January 6 suspects at any level. There's more, ladies and gentlemen. A former NBC executive called Mike Singleton wrote this: don't give up hope. Trump could still be arrested. Arrested for what? I guess there wasn't room in the tweet to explain, but just arrested. Bad people should be arrested. That's the point. What was interesting is that there are a lot of actual criminals who got no space in the Garland speech today. Garland made no mention at all of the pipe bomber. Remember the pipe? Oh, there's the pipe bomber right there. The pipe bomber of January 6th. Maybe it was January 5th, actually. We're observing the anniversary of the pipe bomber right now. That individual was caught, we would say man, but we don't want to get too specific in the current environment. That person was caught on surveillance tape. The pipe bomber was on several phones, or one phone several times. That's all traceable. Where's that person? Merrick Garland didn't even mention it. Here's what he focused on instead.
We have received over 300,000 tips from...
I want to, a couple of things that offer Tucker Carlson some historical corrections. He said there were 40,000 people killed. At Gettysburg, Mr. Carlson, it was 58,000 people. You're missing 18,000 people. That was a bloody day. So if you're going to make reports, you do your historical research before denying 18,000 people the opportunity to have their deaths to be acknowledged. And the other thing is that the fact that he made such a joke out of the event, but he also said Ashley Babbitt was the only person that died that day. Ashley Babbitt was actually in a group of other people who were trying to break into the chamber of the Senate or the House of Representatives, and they had the door had a window panel and then wood panel, and she was crawling through there, and an officer fired on her. Now you can say it was unjustifiable, but she was actually getting ready to attack them. They had their guns pointed at her, Ashley Babbitt. I mean, if somebody's got a gun pointed at you and you're going to climb through a door, broken glass window, you don't have a gun and they got one and you're going to go at them anyway, you have to ask Ashley Babbitt, why did you do that? She's dead now. But for for Tucker Carlson to say that was the only person that died that day, and the only person that died as a result of that is not true. And he tried to obfuscate it. I think several police officers died. Officer Brian Sicknick is one that was pepper sprayed or bear sprayed. He died a day or so later from complications. And several other officers, police officers, we're not talking about, people protesting, we're talking about police officers that died. And several committed suicide. And 150 were injured. And for Tucker Carlson to just ignore them, ignore their sacrifice, ignore their life, ignore their service, it's unforgivable. It's unforgivable that Rupert Murdoch and Fox News would let Tucker Carlson do that to the Capitol Hill police officers. I mean, if you don't think it was a riot, that's fine. If you don't think it was an insurrection, okay, you're entitled to that. But to deny those officers who later died, who were assaulted, who were still out on sick leave, many of them, for Tucker Carlson and Fox News to just ignore the police officers, it's unforgivable. And for Tucker Carlson's audience to allow him to sweep under the rug the contribution of those police officers that did die, that took their lives by suicide because they were so traumatized by that day. It's unforgivable for his audience, but he did it, and he does it. I'll give him one thing, caveat. I don't know if he writes his own speeches that he just gave, but comparing the day in a satirical way to the Tet Offensive in Vietnam and Fallujah in Iraq and the night before Thanksgiving at Walmart, I thought was a cute line. All right, so here, that's what he had to say on January 5th. Let's now go to Anderson Cooper. And by the way, I'm no fan of Anderson Cooper, God forbid. But I want you to listen to his report with the same integrity. These two men, and you can see the difference of what's going on in America. It's like night and day. Mr. Engineer, do you have the Anderson Cooper piece? All right, roll that piece.
Anniversary, the January 6th attack on the Capitol, which we now know was only part of a larger scheme to overturn the outcome for a free and fair presidential election. It was, in every way, an assault on democracy. Looking at the building behind me and all its magnificence and all that it signifies about our democracy should make us all stop and reflect on what we almost lost a year ago tomorrow. And then in the best of all worlds, it would also remind us of all we've done since then, to honestly reckon with what happened, to bind up our wounds, and in a bipartisan way, strengthen the underpinnings of our democracy. That's how the past year might have played out. It might have, but it didn't. And because it didn't, we come to you tonight at a moment that feels no less pregnant with dark possibilities than January 5th did a year ago tonight.
All hell is going to break loose tomorrow. Just understand this. All hell is going to break loose tomorrow. It's going to be moving. It's going to be quick. It's all converging. And now we're on, as they say.
Pause. I want to point out the journalistic integrity of Anderson Cooper. I'm certainly no fan of his, not support. I've got nothing, and the unethical reporting. Tucker Carlson offered no facts, offered no clips, just a continual, if you will, stream of hypocrisy and lies came from Tucker Carlson. But you'll notice that as a journalist, Anderson Cooper will offer people who will make statements. He's not going to say it himself. He'll let people say it themselves. Total integrity difference. The integrity between Anderson Cooper and Tucker Carlson has no integrity. So we're going to start now with Steve Bannon about what he said about the day as opposed to what Tucker Carlson said. Go ahead, Mr. Engineer.
The point of attack, right? The point of attack tomorrow.
Now, when Steve Bannon said that, he was knee-deep in the planning for what would come the next day. The fact that only 9 Republican House members could bring themselves to cite him for contempt after he openly defied a subpoena from the House Select Committee investigating January 6th speaks to why we are at what feels like such a dark moment for democracy. So does the fact that only 2 Republicans voted to cite former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows for also defying the committee, where only 10 voted to impeach the former president. That all speaks volumes. So does the fact that until cooler heads prevailed and it was canceled today, Cobb County's Republican Party had been planning to mark tomorrow's anniversary, in part with a candlelight vigil for members of the violent mob now in jail awaiting trial. That's right, they were going to hail as heroes the alleged worst of the worst people who attacked the Capitol. Take a look at the agenda uncovered by a political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. 6 to 7 p.m. it reads, Candlelight Vigil for J6 Patriots held in Washington. It speaks loudly to where we are tonight. So does the notion of a Republican Party so deeply cowed by their leader, they can't even bring themselves to condemn his new line that this was not the real insurrection, that the real insurrection, by his light, happened on Election Day 2020. Today, former President Jimmy Carter, in a New York Times essay titled, I Fear for Our Democracy, did not identify the GOP by name. He did, however, clearly identify the party's role over the past year. He believes in taking us all to the brink. 1 year on, former President Carter writes, promoters of the lie that the election was stolen have taken over one political party and stoked distrust in our electoral systems. These forces exert power and influence through relentless disinformation, which continues to turn Americans against Americans. Now, Mr. Carter concludes with a warning. Our great nation, he writes, now teeters on the brink of a widening abyss. Without immediate action, we are at genuine risk of civil conflict and losing our precious democracy. That's what a year has brought us. What makes it so sad is this did not have to happen. It didn't have to be this way. Republicans, many of them, at least initially, saw the insurrection for what it was. You heard them say it. They understood clearly what happened.
This is going to be very powerful. This is going to be extremely powerful, because what you're going to hear these Republicans say on the day and the time it happened and shortly thereafter, such as Ted Cruz, and then to hear them absolutely walk it back and deny it now, is unconscionable. It is inconceivable that a man could do such and look himself in the mirror. So this segment's going to be very important when you listen to what these Republicans said about that day, about January 6th. Continue, Mr. Engineer.
And who was responsible?
The mob was fed lies.
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress.
They were provoked by the president and other powerful people.
He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding.
Trump and I, we've had a hell of a journey. I hate it to end this way. Oh my God, I hate it.
The violence, destruction, and chaos we saw earlier was unacceptable, undemocratic, and un-American. It was the saddest day I've ever had as serving as a member of this institution.
To those who wreaked havoc in our Capitol today, you did not win. Violence never wins. Freedom wins.
This has been a truly tragic day for America, and we all join together in fully condemning the dangerous violence and destruction that occurred today in our nation's capital.
Today, the People's House was attacked, which is an attack on the Republic itself. There is no excuse for it. A woman died, and people need to go to jail. And the president should never have spun up certain Americans to believe something that simply cannot be.
Chaos, anarchy. The violence today was wrong and un-American.
Oh, I mean, on that day and over the days that followed, Republicans were saying virtually the same things that Democrats were saying about the assault and who was responsible. But the backsliding, it began almost immediately. On the evening of the 6th, 147 Republican lawmakers, including Elise Stefanik, who you saw there, and Kevin McCarthy, whom you just saw, still voted to overturn electoral counts from the states. And again, all but 10 House Republicans would later go on to vote against impeaching the former president. Kevin McCarthy, of course, would pave the way then for others to make the pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago to make nice with the man you just heard him say bore responsibility for the attack on Congress. Elise Stefanik, too, she would replace Liz Cheney in the GOP leadership, a reward for her loyalty to the former president. And so would begin the year of gaslighting.
The president didn't incite anything.
We have a January 6th committee that Nancy Pelosi is leading that is nothing but a political witch hunt on Republicans and Trump supporters.
As they've proven yet again today, over and over again, they only care about attacking their political enemies.
That it really has turned out to be nothing more than a partisan committee just to investigate the former president.
We've seen plenty of video of people in the Capitol, and they weren't rioting. It doesn't look like an armed insurrection when you have people that breach the Capitol, and I don't condone it, but they're staying within the rope lines in the rotunda. That's not what an armed insurrection would look like.
0 firearms from suspects charged with breaching the Capitol.
In fact, it was Trump supporters who lost their lives that day, not Trump supporters who were taking the lives of others.
I can tell you the House floor was never breached, and it was not an insurrection. You know, if you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January the 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit.
It's pretty shameful. There was that. There was the so-called election audit in Arizona. There's been one Republican-controlled state legislature after another passing new restrictive voting laws based on the big lie, which a majority of Republicans now believe. And as we've been reporting recently, a growing percentage of Republicans are saying that political violence is sometimes justified. 40% in a recent Washington Post poll. That is where the year has taken us. But again, it didn't have to be. Listen to what might have been a far different party line, but sadly wasn't. Here's Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger today.
Some say it's time to move on from January 6th. But we can't move on without addressing what happened or by pretending it never happened. We can't move on without taking action to make sure it never happens again. That starts by admitting the facts. The 2020 election was not stolen. Joe Biden won and Donald Trump lost. We have to admit it, but the leadership of the Republican Party won't. They lied to the American people, and they still are.
Mr. Engineer, we can pause right there. You can drop that screen. More than 20 years ago, Louis Farrakhan, the leader of the Nation of Islam, religious group out of Chicago, led a march on Washington, D.C. to the Lincoln Memorial. And he called for only black men, now they're Hamites, to be a part of that march. White people could not participate. Women could not participate, whether they black or white. But he called for grieving black men, many of them have been locked away in prison for selling a bag of weed, 20 years prison sentence. Many have given unjustifiable sentence, and many have been sent to prison wrongly, and others who had just lost their way, had escaped death 1,000 times. Many had been homeless. We call all these black men to come together, to come to Washington, D.C. Now, there are not a million black Muslims in the world, but he called for black men to come. I've been to Washington on a large number of occasions. I've been at the Lincoln Memorial on a large number of occasions. And while the presidential election, perhaps, of inauguration of Barack Obama or John Kennedy or Lyndon Johnson even may have attracted a large crowd, beyond that, the largest crowd of protesters, marches in Washington was the Louis Farrakhan event, black Muslim and all black men. They went down there early that morning. They returned that evening. No shots were fired. Nobody died. Not one window was broken. Not one piece of glass broken. And not one person injured, with over 1.5 million men following Louis Farrakhan down to Washington that day. Now, I'm not a black Muslim. I'm not a supporter of Louis Farrakhan. I don't support the ideologies as wrong as anything you could think about is religiously wrong. But what I do want to point out is the difference between that march and that protest as opposed to what you saw these white folk do, these Japheth people do, these MAGA hat, these Trumpians people do. The difference between the two is beyond night and day. That the behavior of these white men, these Japheth men, these Trump supporters, what they did, and for this person just a moment ago to say it was a peaceful march and that they stayed within the rope lines, is absurd. And which brings me to my next item. What is going on in America? And I know what it is. I'm raising the question rhetorically. That you can have men of the caliber, from Mitch McConnell to Kevin McCarthy and others, to actually say on the day or shortly thereafter how horrendous this was, and yet now they deny it and say it was just a peaceful march. Well, first of all, they get that lie from Trump. But, even if you are a Trump supporter, you love him, and you think the Democrats are awful, that they're the worst of the worst, how do you reckon with yourself to see what sycophants these people are, what hypocrites they are, what liars they are? And then this one really going to get you, that the men that followed Louis Farrakhan, in terms of them being honorable on a scale of 1 to 100, you'd have to give them 100. No shot was fired. Nobody was stampeded. No glass was broken. Nobody injured at the Farrakhan march. So you got to give them 100. To have that many men, black men, on the streets of Washington and nobody was injured, you got to give them 100. But to have far less white men on the grounds of the Capitol and some woman acting like a monkey crawling through a window, got shot by a police officer who had the gun pointed at her as she was acting like a monkey, crawling through that window. When she saw the police had the gun, back away. And then all the other rioting, that was the offices that were broken into. Mike Pence ran for his life. They had a gallows. They had an actual gallows on the Capitol grounds with a rope on it to hang Mike Pence. And they say it was a peaceful march. I mean, how do you live with people who deny reality like that? And a lot of people think Trump has got a great grip on, he's got a grip on these people, and therefore they're bowing down to them. That's not true. It isn't Trump. It isn't Trump. It's Trump's master. That's who got the grip. This is Satan at his best. I mean, no one has ever seen anything like this. Usually people who do stuff like this step up and say, yeah, I did it, and I'll do it again. Yeah, I broke into Nancy Pelosi's office, and I'll do it again. Yeah, we stormed the Capitol, we'll do it again. Yeah, we said hang Mike Pence, we'll do it again. But to actually do it, and the whole world see it, then you say, we didn't do that. There's got to be, Satan has got to be celebrating like he has never celebrated anything in the annals of his period on earth and takeover of this kingdom. I'm certainly no supporter of Louis Farrakhan. I didn't go to that march, by the way. I didn't go, and I wouldn't let any of the men of this church go. But when it comes to leading a march with Donald Trump and Louis Farrakhan, Donald Trump, in terms of a score of 1, and his people are 1 to 100, gets a minus 500. And Louis Farrakhan gets a plus 100. This is sick. This is sick. I'll tell you what, here's what you do. I'll tell you what you do. Duplicate the actions that you saw on January 6th, whether it be Ashley Babbitt or whether it be the guy with the horns on and the naked, or ruffling through Ted Cruz's desk and going into standing up in the well of the Capitol building. Duplicate them, replace them with all black men. Replace all them white men, replace them with all black men. And you can say that some of the black men belong to the FBI or they belong to the Capitol Hill Police. They belong to some group, but they were black, and they replaced them with all black men. You won't be able to do that. You can't do that. That's an impossible to do. Because the moment they pushed the barricades back and started knocking out windows, the police would have shot the hell out of all of them. They never would have got to Nancy Pelosi's office. They never would have got there. They'd all be dead by now. And if they have to drop a bomb on the Capitol building, they would have killed if they had been all black. And you know it's true. You know it's true. You know it's true. So this is where we are in America today. Well, okay, all right. Jesus is coming. But it probably won't be soon enough to get him here. You know, I've had the unique experience of being on both sides of the fence. I didn't go to the Louis Farrakhan, but I did go to the Tea Party March. And it was a massive assembly as well. It wasn't as big as Louis Farrakhan. But I have the integrity and I've had the experience to have stood on both sides of the fence. And I can tell you, what I see going on now is there is no description for it. You would have to write a new book of evil to describe that Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, what they said initially, and for Mike Pence, for them to say they're going to hang you, and then you turn around and say, I'm still Trump's friend. There's William Shakespeare could not write a novel or a story that could touch this one. This outdistance things in the Bible. This is unbelievable. At any rate, everybody, I'm James David Manning. I'm the Lord's servant. Let me just say this. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not a Democrat. Definitely ain't that. I'm not a Republican. Sure enough, stomped on ain't that. I'm not a liberal. Ain't gonna never be. And I'm not a conservative. I'm not that. I'm not a red boy or a blue boy. I'm the Lord's servant. Listen, I'm not here in support of Joe Biden and Camelback ain't Black Harris. The last thing on the planet Earth would be I'd be supporting them. I'm not. I don't have anything kind to say about them. I'm not here in support of Trump or any of the Trump supporters. I'm the Lord's servant. I ain't on nobody's side. I'm on the Lord's side. Let's be clear. All right, they'll be calling me a Biden supporter and I done flipped the wig and this, that, and the other. I did endorse Trump. I'll admit that I did, but not now.